I really love traveling, but as a freelancer, I basically have to work all the time, and that's why I need a way to be able to work productively on the go as well. Unfortunately, I'm also a fucking nerd and now have a 5-monitor setup at home, so working on the go with just one monitor from my MacBook is definitely out of the question. That's why over the years I've built a portable desk setup from different parts that allows me to work on the go almost as comfortably as at home. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video, and to keep things clear, I've divided everything into 3 categories. Category number 1, stuff I always have with me even if I'm only going away for a single night. First on this list we have my MacBook Pro, because of course working without a laptop on the go is a bit difficult. In my case, it's the MacBook Pro with the M3 Max, 36GB of RAM and a 1TB SSD, which is a bit small, but disk drive space is just very expensive at Apple, so I solved that in a different way, which I'm gonna talk about later in this video. I bought my MacBook in spring this year, and so far I'm super happy with it and even use it as my daily driver at home as well. So it's not like I have a tower at home and then on the go I just use my MacBook. I actually use this MacBook for everything, because the M3 Max is actually really powerful and has handled everything I've thrown at it so far without any issues. Actually, my old gaming PC that I used before that, which I now only use for gaming, struggled a bit with complex 3D animations and stuff like that. Next, we have the device that probably most of you are actually watching this video on right at this moment, according to statistics at least. I'm talking about my phone, of course, and in my case, that's the iPhone 13. I've had the iPhone 13 for almost 3 years now, and it's actually the first cell phone that I'm completely happy with. Before, I always had the urge to upgrade after 1 to at max 2 years because I was unhappy with something. But the iPhone 13 I now have for almost 3 years, and it just works like on day one. And I really use it for everything you would typically use a cell phone for, be it making calls, writing messages, but nowadays also often as a camera for my social media content. Because there are many situations where it's simply quicker and more practical to just pull my cell phone out instead of setting up my big camera. And to be honest, I don't think that this bothers anyone on social media. Actually, most people, I think, probably don't even realize, because the image quality of the iPhone is actually insanely good for a smartphone. Now, when I'm working on the go and do things that need sound, like editing videos, for example, I obviously don't want to blast the sound on speakers throughout the train, for example. So I also always carry headphones. At home, I would typically use my large over-ears, but when I'm out and about, I reduce them and only use the AirPods Pro. I mean, yes, they don't have the best sound quality. They are okay for in-ears, but they don't come close to actual over-ears. So when I know I'm going away for a longer period of time, I might as well take my JBL Live 500 BT, but otherwise the AirPods have to do. And I mean, for the standard stuff, they are totally fine. They are pretty reliably mediocre. Basically, all modern cell phones have one single problem though. The batteries are all pretty rubbish. I mean, archaeologists will probably dig out an old Nokia in about 1,000 years and it will still have some battery left. But that's unfortunately not the case with newer phones. And especially when I'm out and about, I use my phone more, for example, for Google Maps and stuff like that. And I rarely get through a whole day without recharging sometime throughout the day. Now, to solve this problem, I also almost always carry this power bank from Anker with me. And with this, I actually have plenty energy. If I'm out and about and always charge my phone at night with a cable, I can easily get throughout a whole week without having to recharge the actual power bank. Now, I've already mentioned that 1TB in the MacBook itself is a bit tiny. Unfortunately, that's one of the ways in which Apple makes their money. They sell storage at a really incredibly stupid amount of money. That's why I work with almost all of my data on an external SSD, and in my case, that's a SanDisk SSD with 2 TB, meaning that I have a total of 3 TB of running data available, and then a hard drive tower at home with another 16 TB where I store data that I'm no longer actively working on. Category number 2, I'm away for more than one night and I really want to work on the go. Now, I already mentioned that if I have to work on the go, then I really want to have a proper setup where I don't have any problems with having a longer work session. And actually, there are 2 things that used to really piss me off about working on the go. The first one is most chairs are just incredibly uncomfortable if you sit on them for a really long time. Now, this problem is actually a bit hard to solve because unfortunately I can't just take my ergonomic desk chair with me when I'm going on holidays, for example. But the second problem is actually solvable, because previously my neck always hurt terribly at some point, because if you just put the laptop on the table, you sit completely hunched because you always have to look down. And this problem I actually solved with a 3D printed laptop stand, so that I now have a properly ergonomic posture in front of the computer when I'm out on the go as well. But one monitor in the MacBook obviously isn't enough, so I need at least a second one even when I'm out on the go. And for this I use this one from Ursopa, which I got in a sale on Amazon a while ago. The huge advantage of this monitor is that it is relatively small and I can easily take it anywhere, and it only needs a single USB-C cable, and it will get power and the image connection via this one single cable. And then I have the whole thing on another stand, which is actually an iPad stand, but I just put my monitor on there to have it almost the same height as my MacBook monitor. And because 2 screens are also not enough, I usually also have my iPad with me as a third screen. And the practical thing, I don't just have another monitor, but I actually also have an iPad, which I can use as an iPad. Well, and if the laptop is on a stand all the time, then of course it would be incredibly impractical to use the keyboard and touchpad directly on the MacBook, which is why I actually use exactly the same devices as at home. As a keyboard, that's my beloved Akko Black & Gold, which is a mechanical keyboard, which is small, cute and handy, but still has arrow keys. That was important to me, and it still has the great haptic feeling of a mechanical keyboard. And the size is plenty enough at home, and it's also plenty enough when I'm on the go. And as a mouse, I use the MX Master 3S. I have actually tried out a lot of mice over the past 15 years or something, and this one is by far the best. I really find it incredibly practical, especially for use directly with macOS, because macOS is especially well known for its multi-touch gestures on the trackpad, which are very intuitive. Like, for example, this window changing mode when you swipe up with 4 fingers, or switching between different spaces and stuff like that. And you can mimic this behavior extremely well with the MX Master 3S. The software from Logi is really extremely good. A lot of the things can actually be accomplished using this action button directly on the mouse. If I press it once, I also get that window changing mode, for example. Or if I press the action button and swipe left and right, I can again switch between spaces. And it's all super intuitive and very well solved. Category number 3, I also want to produce content when I'm on the go. Now, of course, the camera I use is the exact same one I use when I'm filming videos at home, which is the Canon R6. I mean, that's exactly the camera I'm using right now and that you're actually seeing me through right now. And when on the go, I will use it both for vacation photos, but as well for filming content. And this thing is really an absolute beast for both photo and video. I really love it a lot. As a lens, I will typically carry a standard 24-70 f2.8 from the L series, just as an all-rounder, with which I have covered all standard focal lengths. And then I usually take a special lens with me to have something special at least. Like, for example, on my last holiday, that was the 85 1.4. Or for example, if I want to carry some really heavy stuff, I might also take my 70-200 telephoto lens. Relatively new in my arsenal for when I'm out and about is this super fast tripod from Ulanzi. Because as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually filming quite a bit of my content with my phone nowadays. But I don't usually feel like carrying a big tripod all the time. So if I know that I have a special plan for a special video, I might do that as well, but this small and tiny thing I can simply throw in the backpack and carry it with me all the time. So yes, it's not incredibly stable, and to be honest, it's also made quite cheaply, but it's really fucking practical when I'm somewhere randomly and I just want to set up a camera. So when it's retracted, I sometimes even put my R6 on it. I wouldn't dare to do that when it's extended, because that thing is just pretty unstable. But for a cell phone, that's entirely sufficient. Now, one of the absolute basic rules for video is the audio quality is much more important than the image quality. Luckily, there are now also very handy solutions for that, and I really like using the Lark M2 from Hollyland. The Lark M2 is this small and tiny wireless microphone. The microphone itself just really looks like a small button, basically. And it will then send the audio signal to a receiver. And the extremely practical thing, there are different receivers that you can use. Like, for example, this one that I can put directly onto my camera and then record the sound directly into the camera via cable. Or for example, I use this receiver on my iPhone and then can use the microphone directly on my iPhone without having to configure anything at all. I just plug it in and it works automatically. Super practical. Now, I've talked a lot about all the sorts of stuff that I carry around with me, but all of that stuff has to go in somewhere, right? And over the last few years, I have actually tried out many different camera bags, and I was never really happy with one until my dad actually pointed me to the Mindshift Rotation. At first glance, this actually just looks like a classic hiking backpack. I don't really think that you can see at a first glance that it's actually a camera backpack. And the upper part you can actually just use as a regular backpack. You can just put all of your stuff in there basically. But what makes this backpack so special is that you can pull the lower part forward while having the backpack on, and it then reveals this camera bag. And that means I can easily get to my camera gear on the go without having to take the backpack off. And I still have a relatively large compartment at the top, which is easily big enough to put in all of the clothes, so I can go away for a full weekend just with this bag. But I have also built a very clever set that I can use at home, which allows me to start filming anywhere in our flat in the matter of seconds. And I don't have to spend a super long time setting up lights, putting up a tripod, and all of that stuff. How I built the set you can see in this video, which you should definitely watch next.